Welkom bij deze show vanavond. We hebben het eens een keer over een andere boeg gegooid en niet over de apparatuur. Het gaat vandaag echt over de muziek. En centraal daarin staat Linn Records, het label van Linn die ook elektronica maakt. En Philip die werkt al sinds de 16e bij Linn. Hij kreeg een pot bitumen en een kwast en mocht aan de gang. Maar dat was het begin. Hij is daar nu 30 jaar werkzaam bij Linn en is in de eind jaren 80 begonnen met ook het opnemen van klassieke en jazzmuziek. Hij heeft daar dus enorm veel ervaring inmiddels mee. Het mooie is dat hij ook verantwoordelijk is voor een heleboel ontwerpen, luidsprekerontwerpen van Linn. En dat betekent dat hij dus zowel de techniek, dus het uiteindelijke klinkende product, dus de luidspreker die het moet produceren, het geluid, en helemaal het begin kent van het opnemen van een klassiek orkest. En dat geeft hem een enorm inzicht in de hele keten van opname tot weergever. Dus ook enorm veel stof om over te praten. Nou ja, goed, ik was net al even met hem gaan eten en dan denk je van, ik kan hier nog drie dagen zitten. Maar goed, we beperken het even tot een avondje nu. Het is een interessante verteller, dus ik geef het woord aan Philip Hobbs van Linn.
I have many disadvantages in my life. I am a Scottish engineer. So, in Scotland, if you show any aptitude for engineering at all, you are forbidden to learn any foreign language. So I can just about get by in English, but that's it. So I'm sorry, I cannot attempt Dutch. Also, as I get more interested and more excited about what I'm saying, I tend to speak faster and faster and faster. So, if it becomes completely unintelligible or just very boring, please raise your hand and I'll try and do better. This is a very exciting evening for us because this is the first time we've managed to get a group of people together which don't only come from the local store. Just out of interest, how many of you are customers of this shop already? Any of you? One? So about half of you. And the rest of you found us from, you were targeted by email?
Yes.
And are you existing customers of Linn Records? Have you bought things from Linn Records?
Yes.
Yeah, good. No. So some of you, they just came round to your house. That's fine. What I thought I would talk about this evening is a bit of an introduction to Linn Records, where it came from, where it is now, how the whole Studio Master download thing has changed our business, and I think is beginning to change the whole of the hi-fi business. I'll do a little bit of history, and I'll play quite a lot of music. My background with Linn has been my entire career. I joined the company straight from school at the age of 16, and I'll be 46 this year. So. In Britain, if you commit a very bad murder, they let you out in about 20 years. So, I don't know. So I'll start with some Bach. Most of my musical choices this evening are classical and some jazz, but hopefully this will suit. Here's some Bach. This is a group called the Retrospect Ensemble with the Easter Oratorio. That recording was made in this wonderful church in the north of London called St Jude on the Hill in Hampstead, which many of you will know if you know any of the old Decca Academy of Ancient Music recordings. All those recordings from the early 80s, from Christopher Hogwood through to the big Dream of Gerontius that Chandos did so splendidly, and a whole pile of other great records were made there. It has a peculiar and unique and wonderful acoustic, and for baroque strings and singers in particular, I don't think there's anywhere like it on earth. It's so easy. When I first started recording, the first sort of commercial job I did for another label was some Purcell church music that I did in that church, and it felt like I'd really arrived, because I spent my entire teens listening to all these Hollywood recordings and that string sound. And you finally open a fader and that thing happens. It's the most wonderful, extraordinary thing. Linn Records started nearly 30 years ago, and it grew out of a sort of peculiarity of Linn in general, which is that almost everybody who works there is in some way a music enthusiast or a player, or they do something to do with music in their spare time, as well as just working on hi-fi as their day job. So we started making a record player, and then after a couple of years of making a record player and working out how to make a better record player, which is where the Linn Sonde came from, what we wanted to do was to try and apply the same ideas to making a cutting lathe. Because we looked at the record player and said, well, what have we done to make this better? We've come up with a much better bearing. We've come up with a much more effective tone arm and a way of connecting it to the bearing and connecting everything together. And then we went and looked at commercial cutting lathes and thought, this is a nightmare. It's all oil baths and everything floats about, and it's all direct drive and there's rumble. So we thought that we could make a better cutting lathe. And indeed we built a better cutting lathe. Of course we had no music to cut. So we then started contacting various recording studios around Scotland, and they lent us some master tapes. And then we started making records, very, very slowly. And at that time we only issued them on LP. A little while later we discovered how difficult it was to cut records, because of course we were hi-fi people. And the whole problem with cutting records is it's not like hi-fi at all. If you try to make music fit on a record, you have to do all sorts of terrible things to it. You have to mono all the bass, you have to compress it, you probably have to change the tonal balance in other ways to make it fit. We had none of the tools to do this. So, providing you wanted to cut a record of string quartet, which was only about 12 minutes long, then we could do a very good job. But anything more commercial or any longer, we made it go away. We learnt a great deal in the process of making it, but actually what was more important to us was we established the idea that we wanted to be a label and we wanted to work with musicians, and that's something which has continued all the way through. I was sort of on the periphery of some of this. I'd gone off to university and then came back, in the middle of which we had a fantastic pop group called the Blue Nile, who were very famous in the 80s. Cost us an enormous amount of money, and we're very, very proud of them, but we have no contact with them these days, so I won't be playing you that. But the first thing that we found after that was a jazz artist by the name of Claire Martin. And it's the only time in my life I've done the thing that you're supposed to do as an A&R person, which is to get a tip off of an act and go and see them and sign them on the night. And I was in a hotel in London and turned the television on, and Richard Rodney Bennett, the great composer, jazz player, arranger, marvellous man, was on a talk. So I said, I'm going down to Ronnie Scott's to hear this artist. She's great and she's new and somebody should sign her. So I scampered off and signed her. She's marvellous. So this is the second album we made with her, Too Darn Hot.